A British t-shirt maker has found fortune and fame in Beijing's Hutong. What's his secret to success? Let's take a closer look.
Knowing the importance of having reliable workers and building good relations with the local community for his business in China, Dominic Johnson-Hill, an icon of Beijing streetwear culture, made a surprising choice by hiring Chinese retirees. Johnson-Hill, the owner of Plastered, a popular t-shirt retailer, has lived in China for 20 years. In his two stylish shops in Beijing, he has always hired retired women from his neighborhood for his sales staff.
Most attendants in your shops are like elderly Chinese women.
All of them?
All of them.
Except for the people who, the students who help out on the weekends. I think the elderly you can trust a lot more than the younger generation. They sort of grew up more as socialists.
Initially, he hired a young woman to help run the shop, but she took the money and ran to the countryside. It was then when a retired woman in her 50s, who lived in the same courtyard, came to him offering her help. Johnson-Hill recalls her saying, "I'd like to help you, and you won't be cheated again."
Suddenly I watched the revenues of the store go up and up and up. Because everyone liked her. And I realized that she totally suited the concept, which is I do creative, t-shirts and creative things that celebrate Beijing. And she was part of Beijing. She was a local matriarch. She was a queen of the area.
Like a living model.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone loved her. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, the thing that I was looking for the most was right under my nose. It was in my shared courtyard.
But how did you manage to communicate with the Chinese elderly who grew up in completely cultural background from you? I mean, those above the 60 or...
At the end of the day, I go back to what I was saying is I'm a shopkeeper. And the guys I was doing business with were shopkeepers or could understand what it is to run a shop. I was starting a creative t-shirt shop. It's tangible and understandable for them.
Hutongs, Beijing's traditional alleyways and courtyards, have largely been demolished in favor of modern apartment buildings and shopping malls. So the few that remained are all the more precious. Johnson-Hill explained his so-called Hutong queens are the perfect representatives for his t-shirts that seek to capture the culture mystique of Beijing. Another one of his Hutong queens happens to be his store's landlady. He's grateful to be on such good terms with her.
A lot of people said to me, why would you have your landlady running your shop? Because she'd understand your revenues. And therefore she would, probably cheat you.
Yeah.
Right? Actually, I don't believe that. You know what? First of all, she's worked for me for 5 years. I'm transparent with my revenues. I have nothing to hide. And I communicate with her every day. Most people on this Hutong, their landlords suspect they have good revenues. Suspect they're making probably more than they are, and only communicate with them once a year or once every 2 years when the contract comes up.
In China, foreigners can run a joint venture with a local partner or run their own business as a wholly owned foreign enterprise, which requires initial capital that Johnson-Hill lacked back in 2005. So he rented a 13 square meter shop in Hutong to sell his t-shirts. His landlord then was a 60-year-old man. The Plastered brand found quick success, allowing Johnson-Hill to leave that small space and open his own store in 2007. He opened a second location in early 2012 and says the company generates around $1 million annually.
This is what we call the flagship store now. So yeah, it used to be an old kiosk, and my house that I lived in for 9 years is right through the window at the back of here. So that's where I grew up, in a shared courtyard at the back of the store. It's great memories. This is Zhang Jie, who has been working for us for quite some time. I think there's a lot of very good sort of, feng shui, I don't know, it just seems like, it's got all the right feelings. Good luck here. It's got the community, it's got, friends, family, everything's here. The original designs came from things that I'd collected, or things that I saw every day in my life here in Beijing. It was really a foreigner's eye of the city. Like these old mugs. used to be in the homes of every Chinese person I visited in the early 90s. And this was a particular mug that I collected that had a great slogan on it. It said, "Socialism is great." And I remember I used to hold that mug thinking it was such a powerful mug. I loved it. And so I just took the mug and had it, made into a graphic and had it plastered on a t-shirt. So, that's how it started, really.
Nowadays, Dominic's business rakes in about $1 million per year, and he himself has become a public face on Chinese television. However, when he first came to Beijing in 1993, he was no more than a backpacker with a few changes of clothes and a fistful of dollars. Back then, he could hardly imagine himself as a future icon of Beijing's pop culture.
Johnson-Hill first came to China in 1993 when he was just 20. Before that, he had just finished a 3-year journey, which took him from his home in England to Africa, India, and eventually to Beijing. He did some grassroots market research business before venturing into the streetwear retail in 2005. For 8 years and a half, he lived in the Nanluo-Gushan Hutong, one of China's oldest residential areas, and witnessed the changes in that area. How has this place have changed around over the years?
It's completely changed. When I moved here, there were no shops on this street. It was just a quiet alleyway. In fact, I used to take a table and chairs and just put them in the middle of the street, with my kids to have dinner. Right now it's early morning, there's no one here, but if you come here on the weekend, it's people walking like this. There's so many people. It's just a whole sea of people. This is just one street, but the whole of Beijing has changed. The whole city has developed. When I came here in the 1990s, in 1993, at night, Beijing was dark. It was a dark city. You go around, it really wasn't lit up.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
You walk around a dark city and it was dark and quiet. You could hear people, in the buildings doing their dishes and, talking and stuff. Now it's, big wide roads all lit up and noisy and neon. It's like, the whole city has changed.
But do you like the changes?
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be right for me to wanting to hold on to the past. Of course, I loved it in the early 90s because it was quieter, there was no traffic, and it was, I felt like it was my city. There were hardly any foreigners here. But now there's more opportunity for people, You see, Beijing is, you see people starting their own businesses, and you see, people owning cars, buying their own apartments, doing well, people seem happier.
Yep.
I think. And here was my first store. It's a pile of rubble. Yeah, this is where I opened my first store, was here. It's now being made into an underground car park, which it's a shame, but I think, progress. But yeah, this is where it all started. I had, with my first partner was a 65-year-old retired man who owned a little 13 square meter spot right here. And I remember I was opening it up. They were starting to build a backpacker hotel right in front of it. And I thought to myself, what a great opportunity. And my first store is going to be right opposite a backpacker hotel. I love the hutongs, it was what inspired me to start my business, Plastered. It was what inspired me to grow my family in Beijing as well. I lived in a shared courtyard home with 4 families.
How would you like to define a Hutong culture?
It's very communal. It's a sharing culture. You share goods. You share bits of wood, you share bits of roof, you share toilets, you share meals, you share families. My children grew up in the hands of 4 or 5 different families.
And one of the reasons you have succeeded in your business is that you managed to incorporate the community into what you're doing. So how did you achieve that?
We always incorporated community into the business, and we became a community brand. I was very proud of that. And in fact, we managed to change a whole community because we started the first creative business on the street. We involved the community in helping us build the business, and then encouraged other businesses to come in and open up too, in the creative industries at least. And so we were super proud of what we did.
He and his family lived very near his flagship shop until last year,
and 3 of his 4 daughters grew up immersed in the communal life of Beijing.
And my children they knew dishes I'd never knew about, you know. They would come back with, you know, old bits of pottery that were 100 years old, 200 years old, that neighbors had given them, that they'd found in their courtyard. You know, so it was, you know, an amazing life, you know, to have my children to have grown up and completely affected their personalities.
He was the first foreigner to be elected to the local Chamber of Commerce and is quite friendly with the local police. A few years ago, he helped them promote the national census by appearing in the promotional video. Like many businesses in China, Johnson-Hill must cope with piracy. But he says the best way to deal with it is to continually reinvent yourself.
The blood of the business is creativity. If you slow down, you get eaten up. You get eaten up by the people that copy you, copy your concept, and the people who fake your stuff. That's the nature of business here right now.
And that's also one of the tips that you would like to give foreigners who would like to invest in China's creative business?
Yes. I think there's massive opportunities in China in the creative industries, because there's not that many players in the creative industry here. I don't really have that many competitors in the market that I'm in.
And what's your next plan to expand your business? Is there any plan to like franchise your brand? Or?
No, I have no interest in franchise. I've never had an interest in franchise, to be honest. I've always looked at my business as a small giant. I think I'd be quite happy with about 5 stores. I think 8 is my lucky number, so maybe 8 stores will be my will be the sky for me.